You're listening to Heroes in the Moment. What's up, heroes? I'm Michael.
And I'm Nathan.
And today we're finishing up our review on the AHSOKA series.
We back at it.
We're back at it. It's been a little bit of a hiatus. I was sick. Nathan went to Europe without telling me.
Yeah, I did. I went to Rome. Well, Rome, but I went to Italy and Switzerland for a couple weeks with my wife's family. And Michael texts me and he's like, by the way, I can't record. I'm sick. And I was like, I can't either because I'm in Rome.
And I was like so confused.
Rome? You mean like in Italy? I was like, yeah. I mean, I should have just taken like a selfie of me from the Coliseum and sent it to you. Like, yeah, man.
I mean, I was so taken aback. I was like, Rome? What do you mean you're in Rome? Are you kidding me? What?
I forgot to tell you.
No, it's all good. It's just hilarious.
I move in silence like a G in lasagna. That's what they say, right?
I guess. I don't know. I mean,
anyway, we're back. We haven't abandoned you guys. But
yeah, we have not. We're not like those quitters. We're still pursuing. We're still
here. We're still here.
So we're going to round it up. So last we left off with AHSOKA was the phenomenal episode 5 with Anakin and the whole amazing thing that was. And then we come back with episode 6. So we're going to cover today. We're going to do episode 6, 7, and 8. Okay. We're going to go through those and kind of briefly touch on each of those and highlights of the episode really is what we're getting at. We're not going to go really full breakdown because we don't have time. It would be a long episode.
And you've already seen
so we're going to go over the highlights for 6, 7, and 8. And then we're going to cover this series as a whole. So let's get into it. So episode 6 is titled Far, Far Away, and we get into it. And this episode, honestly, was really good. I really enjoyed this episode. Yeah. I think it definitely maintained the same kind of stability as the rest of the series was. But one thing I feel like that happened is after episode 5 and the whole AHSOKA thing, the series changed a little bit in its vibe, if that makes sense.
And honestly, I don't know if it was a great thing for the show, to be honest. I loved 5. I think it could have worked as a standalone episode. Oh, absolutely. But I didn't really love where the plot points went after that episode.
I understand that. I feel like it makes sense in that way, but at the same time, the big change with it definitely involved like where we were building towards. And then after realizing what the next 3 episodes, 6, 7, 8 were, is the fact that it's building towards something greater than just staying here in this show.
Yeah, and
I think that was the point.
Like you really quickly realize, like, okay, hey, this is not going to really wrap up in a season. No,
right?
It's going into
and that's what I thought initially going in. I thought it would like have more of a wrap up. But in actually looking back now, I'm like, it makes sense that it didn't, the fact that it's leading towards a greater movie. Yeah. So I'm okay with that. So with this episode, it starts off with something I say gave me chills, and that being Hu Yang and AHSOKA flying through in the Pergil, and her asking him to tell a story, and then he starts it out with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
I've heard this before.
I was like, Star Wars is over.
He knows.
End it now.
He knows.
He's the greatest. That was so great. Yeah. I'm like, this is where we get our stories, man.
Yeah.
And I thought it was also great because the fact that, like he's saying, a long time ago, and that's the whole mantra of Star Wars, but also the fact that this is the first time in Star Wars we're going to a brand new galaxy, and the fact that that's alluding to this as well.
Yeah.
Is really cool. And we're going to do a full breakdown towards the end of this podcast about this galaxy and what we think its potential will be in the future. Because there's a lot of theories going around and they're good ones.
I haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah, well, good. We're going to enlighten you.
Okay.
So, but Hu Yang, that was like, Star Wars is over. I paused it right there. I rewinded it, watched it again. I was like, all right, Star Wars is over. I'm satisfied. We're good. But it was just great to see that. All right. So again, we're just going over some highlights. Episode 6, the biggest takeaway and the biggest highlight here is they land on this galaxy and we see the return of the fantastic Grand Admiral Thrawn.
He looked great.
He looks great.
He looked awesome.
I mean, I'm so glad they went with Lars Mikkelsen.
Yeah.
The same voice actor.
He embodied it really well.
And he embodied it in live action just as good.
Makeup looked great on him,
Makeup looked great. His voice, again, was perfect.
Yeah.
Same as it was in the series. It literally, this was the most accurate, right, depiction because it was the voice actor. And we'll have a little bit to say about Ezra a little bit later on, too, because that actor did a good job as well.
Yeah, I thought he was killer.
He was. So, but Thrawn himself, oh my goodness. And you're finally getting to witness the rise, right? You see his potential. Like, he's such a good villain.
Yeah.
And you can tell that right from the get-go. And the thing that I loved is his entrance, right? His entrance was beautiful. The stormtroopers were menacing. Yeah. Obviously, we find out why, because they're undead.
I was like, what is the zombie troopers?
It makes sense because, I mean, obviously they crash landed in the galaxy, and Ezra and Thrawn were the ones that protected up top of the Force, so everybody else probably on that ship was dead.
Yeah.
So that made sense. It was cool. And then his like captain guy with the face, that was scary.
We were looking. I was like, what is this?
I was like menacing. I was like, bet, let's bring it on.
Let's go, baby.
I was loving it. His entrance, he was just like thanking Morgan Elsbeth obviously for coming, and we got more Night Sisters that were actually the first full-on look of the Night Sisters in live action. They looked great to me.
Yeah.
And I think they were a good addition as well to help Thrawn.
They look great, but at the same time, I don't know. I guess they made sense, but it was just, I felt like it was weird having Night Sisters like in this. To be, I don't know.
I've got theories about it.
Like a very like spiritual kind of side to
Right.
this, like, you know, Ezra and Thrawn and Ahsoka.
Right.
You know, I don't know.
I got theories about that. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
Though, but I've got some theories. So that was cool. And just seeing the return of Grand Admiral Thrawn, him talking to Sabine, recognizing her, obviously, and then sending her to prison there, and then eventually agreeing to let her and Balin, like, to go over Balin's initial promise to let her go after Ezra.
Mm-hmm.
But he was like, no, send Balin and Shin after them to
Yeah.
stop them once and for all, which you see he's always 3 steps ahead, which
Yeah.
I love that. And I love how they're implementing it. And they implement it so well. And the fact in this show it's different is because they show it is the fact that we see a little bit of Thrawn's planning and his mindset in this
Yeah.
episode more than we saw in Rebels. In Rebels, he was just always 10 steps ahead, and we never really knew why
Yeah.
or how he was. In this show, you could see that because
You get to see the inside.
where you got to see that insight because of his planning and what it showed. And then also when Morgan Elsbeth said Ahsoka's coming, he's like, find out everything. I want to know every single thing about her, who the master is, her background.
Pull up that resume
all
right
that.
now.
He wanted to know everything just so
Yeah.
he'd be that step ahead. And we see that come into play later. So just great to see Thrawn's return in this episode. Love him, and I'm so glad of what they're doing with him in this show. So then we can see Sabine going on a little kind of like a hike throughout this galaxy, this planet, to try to find Ezra. And she comes across these little rock people that kind of remind me of the Ewoks they're from Endor.
I didn't think about that.
They remind me a lot of that.
Yeah.
They're very much similar to that. And they eventually lead to the reunion with Ezra Bridger, and we get to see him. And I will say, this also live action, the person they casted is really good job.
It's perfect. He kind of remind me of Jesus, low key.
like the
like honestly,
actual
that's what I was
version.
thinking. Yeah,
Yes, that's or a disciple look.
Yeah,
yes.
disciple.
He's got that
Yeah.
look, but he looks great.
He looked great.
and he embodies Ezra really well.
Mhm.
Like this felt like a seamless transition to live action to me.
Yeah.
Because he acted like he did in the show. He had that witty humor. He was funny. He was, he had all this stuff going on for
Yeah,
him. and
weird
I
to
really
see him
appreciate
so
that.
grown up.
It is weird to see him grown up. Like when we
This
left
makes
him, he
sense.
was like 16, 17.
Yeah, just
And now
young little pup.
he's a lot older than that. So that was really cool to see Sabine and Ezra's reunion. But this was really the episode. Ahsoka didn't really have a lot to play in this episode except for the big initial beginning.
And there wasn't even like a ton that happened, I think, in this episode.
Well, the big things that happened was obviously Thrawn's return to the Ezra Bridger reunion.
Yeah, but
So
it was like
pretty massive.
setting up the episode that sets up the finale. At
Right.
least it felt like to me like there was no
It could've
like
been.
big conflicts. It's like, okay, here's our
Yeah.
big players.
Right.
Now they're introduced. Now we can go into this
But
next
one thing I do appreciate from the Ahsoka show and this is the only Star Wars show to date to do it, it has no fillers. This was the first series that had no fillers. Mando season 3 maybe, but it kind of did.
It didn't have.
But
This made a couple.
Ahsoka had no fillers, and I really appreciated
Yeah.
that. Every episode was continuous, and it led to one thing, and it was continuing the plot. I definitely appreciate that from Star
Thank
Wars.
you, Filoni.
Yes, thank you.
I hate
Thank
filler
you.
episodes. They just
I
feel like a
know.
waste of time.
They do.
Really.
They do. Like I don't want to see you go get milk.
It's different like when you're playing a game like Red Dead and you do like a side mission.
Right, that's
you
well. You
like,
don't
you're
have
fully
to do
invested,
it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you want to do it, you can. But if you don't, you don't have to.
Yeah, but then you're watching the show. You're like 45 minutes. How is this
Right.
gonna what's it gonna do for me?
Right, and I mean, Clone Wars and Rebels did it too.
Yeah.
So I mean, even though those shows were typically
But like
better,
Clone Wars fillers were a little like more interesting.
They
at least.
were.
Entertaining.
some of them.
So,
there was some weak ones.
The freaking Martinez sisters, whatever they were called.
Yeah, that
and
was
the-
horrible.
I was like,
and then
what
also
is
there's
this?
some other ones that are not that good.
Yeah, in
but,
the
like,
first
the whole
season
water
especially.
one.
Yeah, I wasn't
Not a huge
wasn't
fan of that
a big
one.
fan of that one.
But overall, I'm really proud of Ahsoka here for not giving us any fillers because I mean this show didn't really need it and it didn't really have a purpose for him. So
Yeah.
I would appreciate that. All right, now to get into episode 7, and honestly, if you take out episode 5, like if you take out episode 5 because episode 5 had a lot of fan service and a lot of cool stuff like that,
Yeah.
I think episode 7 was the best episode.
I do think it was better than finale.
I think it was so good.
Yeah, honestly, that's kind of weird to say. Actually, maybe it's not. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it did a great job setting up for the finale, but
It
obviously
did.
I felt like the finale was a little disappointing. But I didn't think there was too many flaws. Personally, when it comes to 7, I thought that Thrawn, I think he peaked a little bit in 6 because as we know, like he's a super genius intellect. But I just feel like they don't write to his level. I feel like he makes a couple like I don't know, just dumb choices that like.
But he didn't
anybody
make
can
any mistakes though.
Maybe not mistakes, but at least in the family, I'm probably getting ahead of myself. But I just wish low key that they would have made him even cooler.
Yeah.
But Balin by far is my favorite part about number 7.
Balin's the best part of the show.
I think I would say he's definitely the most intriguing, and I think he's the best written character in the entire show.
I completely agree.
It makes me sad that we're never gonna see. You know,
I just hope we get something from him in the future.
I think I saw something saying they were gonna recast him just because like how important he was.
He was, and I have some stuff about that too here in a little bit when we get to 8. But Balin was incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, and I think everybody agrees he's the best character to come out of the series.
Because like you don't know.
No,
you know,
like, he has such a mystery. Like I've legit thought
his intent the entire time.
That's one thing is typically these shows of late of Disney Plus have been pretty predictable.
Yeah,
and we can predict. And I completely thought Balin was going to die pretty early on.
Yeah,
and the fact that he didn't. You're
like, okay, what? Okay,
like,
now he's sending shit away. Now he's gonna die. Okay, he didn't know it. Why does he want this?
I know. And I'm like,
where
hype.
Did he come from? Yeah,
I love Balin.
How is he like holding his own against Ahsoka? Like,
I know.
This guy
it's exciting to see that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I loved episode 7 from start to finish. I thought it was great. The episode started off with C-3PO, my guy.
I was not expecting.
I was not expecting him at all. But I'm like, 3PO, what are you doing here, my guy?
Yeah.
He coming in here and like mentioning Leia, like Hera was working under Leia's orders, which brings me to like
that
question.
wasn't true though, was it? Like, wasn't he just capping?
No, Leia for sure. Like, well, she didn't like give the orders for them to do it, but Leia did like cover Hera.
Yeah,
like, she lied to make it up.
Mm-hmm.
But this makes me question. I'm like, with Heirs to the Empire, the storyline, the book Heirs to the Empire is Luke and Leia and Solo are heavily involved in the book.
Uh-huh.
I'm wondering, will their characters be in the movie? Like it feels like a pivotal point for them to be in it.
Yeah, and like you said, like in the timeline in Star Wars, like Luke and Leia, like they're extremely prevalent. In this timeline,
they're very prevalent.
Why wouldn't we see it? Person, to be honest, I hope they don't bring back like a CGI like Carrie Fisher.
Right,
I don't think that would do her justice.
And I don't know if the family would want that either.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I
think
know.
they'd have to like cast a younger.
It's a new page. It's a new turn. So I don't know, dude.
I don't know.
Like as much as I would like to see it, like. I don't think they should.
Maybe they should do like they did with Luke, Mark Hamill, and bring him back in his younger form, because they did a really good job with that. Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian.
Sebastian Stan too,
or Sebastian Stan.
Yeah, he looks just
great.
like
he
him.
does. So I mean, maybe bring him back, and then maybe instead of having Leia involved, just have her mentioned several times.
but like the presence of Luke's
because
character.
everybody would understand that.
Because it makes sense that they're trying so hard to tie like these newer Star Wars characters into like the original trilogy time, but they're not going to pull those original trilogy characters in. So older Star Wars fans are going to be like,
and that's the one
why
thing
should I
is
care?
Many regard the Thrawn trilogy or the Heirs to the Empire book the true sequels. So that's one thing is like. Everybody's wanting to happen is to decanonize the initial sequels we got.
I hate this.
And then Dave Filoni take over and give us this Heirs to the Empire Thrawn trilogy.
Yeah.
That would be the stand new sequels. But the problem with that being is we would have to have Luke and Leia in it.
Yeah.
So I don't know how
that
would
be
it.
possible.
That would be really hard to accomplish.
At that point, it would just become more muddy. There'd be more movies and more confusion. So
I don't know how they accomplish
best left as is.
But we'll see how they do it. Anyway, I love seeing 3PO back again, justifying Hera and getting Hera out of that jam.
Nah, she good.
Really cool to see that. And then we get Ahsoka watching back Anakin's old training videos, which I thought that was really
Rebels,
cool.
Right?
Yeah, well, you see that in Rebels, and then also we see it now from her old perspective. And I thought it was particularly cool that he not only name drops General Grievous, Count Dooku, but also Ventress.
That's my girl there.
That was sick. Yeah. That was the first live action name drop of Visage Ventress.
That would be so cool to see in live action.
It would be cool. I don't think we'd ever would.
Yeah, we would never. But she was always one of my favorites in Clone Wars.
She's cool. She's a cool character.
So cool.
I would like to see them do a maybe like a Tales of the Jedi storyline of what happened to her.
Yeah,
because I think that needs to be answered.
Because like technically they said that she was killed by Dooku, wasn't she?
They said that she was either killed by Dooku or Quinlan Voss. I'm not sure what exactly.
Was he like the one with like the yellow?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. I would love to see maybe a Tales of the Jedi arc of that.
That'd be fine.
Maybe Filoni, here's your idea.
Yeah.
Do it.
I always felt bad for her because she was very similar to Maul. Like she was. Talent that was like just manipulated her entire life.
And my only thing is I didn't really understand her character because obviously the Sith rule of two there can only be 2 Sith, no more no less. So at that time it was obviously Palpatine and Dooku, and then Ventress was kind of this acolyte that was being used by Dooku, and the same kind of as the Inquisitors were.
Yeah.
So that's one problem I have with the whole idea of Inquisitors and Ventress is because it kind of, makes the rule of two not as prevalent. You know, that's the only problem I have with those things. Even though those characters are cool.
Yeah.
But,
I guess it makes sense because like she was never regarded as a Sith by the Sith. Like she was always just known as like an assassin.
right.
Kind of. I mean, obviously Maul was a lot
Just
more
with force
established than her.
abilities.
And
And I
like,
guess
it just
it-
makes you wonder
yeah.
like how powerful she would have been if she was properly trained into
Right.
that.
Right. And I guess it also makes sense because obviously there's going to be Force users out there that are not good,
Yeah.
that have the ability of the Force, that are going to use like lightsabers, such as Savage Opress,
Yeah.
et cetera.
Man, he was a beast physically.
Love Savage.
Yeah.
But, it's just kind of weird there with the whole rule of two deal because I feel like knowing Palpatine, he would have those people executed for being
Yeah.
involved. But
Yeah.
I don't know. But it was really cool seeing those training videos, and Hayden has done such a good job
Yeah.
embodying the Clone Wars version of Anakin.
I know he has
Such a good job. Because like when I was watching it, I was in my mind, I was like, that's Clone Wars Anakin. Like I can like there's no it's not like there's a disconnect.
Yeah, there's no overlap.
There's
like,
nothing
this is
like
the
that.
same guy.
I thought that was sick.
Yeah, he's really improved his acting chops.
He definitely has.
Yeah.
He definitely has. I'm excited. I'm excited to see him in the future. Hopefully, we'll get casted some roles and maybe get
Yeah.
something big in the future.
That'd
I
be
hope.
cool.
I would love that. Honestly, he would make a good Cyclops.
You think
Low-key.
so?
Low key.
Cyclops?
he kind of might be a good Cyclops.
I have a harder time seeing Cyclops.
I don't know.
What
I mean,
they
he's
need
a
to
bit
do?
older now.
They need to make like a drama with him in it, like him like in the family or something. Let him
Could be.
showcase.
Could be.
Come on, Christopher Nolan, just give him a little role.
We'll see what he
Cool.
does. All right, so then we see Thrawn actually finding out that Anakin was Ahsoka's master and him being shocked by
Yeah,
that.
he's like, oh my goodness.
I know, he's like, uh-oh.
He's like, uh-oh.
But it's really cool to see like he knew Anakin, he worked with Anakin in the
Yeah.
Clone Wars, and how he realized that Ahsoka's going to be very unpredictable because of that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, she's not your stereotypical Jedi, just like your
definitely
Qui-Gon
not.
Jinns.
Definitely not. And then we see also in this episode Ezra and Sabine fight against Shin. We see that. Only thing I didn't like about this part is Ezra, I understand why he didn't take the lightsaber because that was now
He's like,
Sabine's.
the Force is all I need.
And then he just used it pushing people. I thought
Yeah.
that was kind of dumb.
I know, and then the next episode, like he has a blaster. It's like,
I know.
what do you mean?
I don't know. I mean, it was cool to see him like using
It's
the Force.
cool when
and doing
Darth Maul
stuff.
does it in the tunnel.
It is. Oh, that was
Oh,
sick.
that was fire.
Oh, when he's cutting people. Oh,
Yeah,
man,
throwing
that was
those
sick.
pieces.
But I don't know. That was kind of stupid. But it was cool to see him fight against Shin and,
Yeah.
and then that whole battle. And then we see Ahsoka meeting back up with Balin.
Balin, yeah.
And my question is here is Balin seems to have a really big mindset towards Ahsoka. Like,
Yeah.
why is he so keen on Ahsoka, right? His orders was to go after Ezra and Sabine,
Mm-hmm.
not to worry about Ahsoka. Why was he so keen on her?
I don't know, dude. I really don't have any theories.
I do. I'm going to save it for the end.
Okay.
Because his character is definitely somebody we're going to see for sure. Because I think I might have him figured out of who he is just because of the end of it, episode 8.
I will say, I was a little slightly disappointed by the lightsaber battles. I feel like they just all kind of come to the draw and they're just kind of inconsequential. And like they've
Yeah.
been like that the entire series. Like no one really gets hurt. They fight and then they leave. It's like, okay, man, like when's someone gonna die?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
And you know what's something I've noticed recently? You know how like in the original Star Wars trilogy, in the prequel Star Wars trilogies, every single lightsaber fight, besides the Mustafar fight, and even then it had the huge backdrop of the red and
Yeah.
fire and lava, has taken place indoors.
Really?
But every single lightsaber fight from Disney has taken place outdoors.
Actually,
Actually.
I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Yeah, Rey and
Mm-hmm.
Kylo in the snow.
Yep.
What else
I
do
mean,
we
you
have?
could consider their prison match, but like it wasn't really a
Yeah.
lightsaber fight. It was just them fighting against them soldiers in the red.
You think that's an intentional move by Disney?
I don't know because like when Obi-Wan they fought outside,
Yeah.
right? In Rebel, well, not counting animation,
Yeah.
but in the Mandalorian they fought. I mean, Luke had his hallway scene that was indoors, but he didn't
Yeah.
fight against another lightsaber.
Yeah.
But anytime two lightsabers come together, it's always outside.
Hmm.
In Disney Star Wars, live
maybe
action.
maybe they're just trying to clash
Broaden
against the
the-
sky, or it
don't
might
know.
be solely due to cinematography.
Could be.
I mean, at least in the originals, there's a couple fights outside. Like, well, not I guess no, never mind. I was gonna say Luke, but he's not fighting somebody else.
I
with a
mean,
lightsaber.
obviously they pull out their lightsabers outside in all
Yeah.
of them, but when two lightsabers clash it's always inside in the originals
Yeah.
and prequels besides Mustafar.
And a lot of times, if you notice, like by Disney, it's like in darker times. Like it's almost always night or evening.
is.
That way, like I mean, obviously, like so you can see the lightsabers
So
better
it's-
against the
I
black.
don't know. It's just really weird. I've just noticed that. I'm like, huh, why? But,
Yeah, I don't
oh well,
know.
it's just kind of a little tidbit.
Yeah.
But I agree with what you're saying. The lightsaber choreography in this episode wasn't perfect, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it was still.
And they also don't do as much damage as they used to. Like in the prequels, them things are like, woo!
We'll get to that in episode 8. We'll get to
Okay.
that in episode 8. But Thrawn, in his mind, he's like, he lets them go for now. He's like, they're not a threat to me right now,
Yeah.
which was true. So he let that go. And that was pretty much episode 7. I really loved this episode. I just thought it was really good. Had a lot of what I was looking for
Yep.
and everything about
The
it.
pacing was good, and I thought it was written very well.
It was. Episode 8, let's get into the finale. Now, this finale, it's a good episode. Don't get me wrong. It's a good episode. It's just not a good finale. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do think that this one, I think it turned out like a lot of Disney Plus finales. Like as always, like I feel like no matter what the project is,
Right.
They say all right, 6, 9 episodes, and they give you time, and then
Right.
they always set up so many leads and so many plot points that have to be finished in
Right.
the last episode, and it never does. And they're
Right.
like, okay, here's a new season, and then maybe they won't address it later.
And I think a lot of that, and I agree. Every single Disney Plus has not been able to get finales right
Like,
on
ever.
any show. Even though shows like are typically really good and still rate them good,
Yeah.
the finales are still
And
struggled.
some of the shows have excuses, like Falcon Winter Soldier and WandaVision because of COVID. You know, it was
COVID,
clearly
right.
changed. But it's just stuff like this. Like, I don't think it's a valid excuse to say, okay, we have a movie, we have a second
Right.
season coming, we're just gonna wrap it up. They're like, no, like the plot points that you established that you're gonna wrap up this season, say like Sabine telling Ezra how she got there, like wrap it up in the finale.
Right.
You know?
I get that. And I feel like they kind of messed it up. And I feel like 2 more episodes would have been great for this show. I feel like 2 more episodes would have been a good roundup. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like 8 to 10 is always really good. It's better than 6, the typical
Oh, yeah,
Disney
dude,
Plus
6
formula.
is terrible.
It's better than that. I'm glad they went with 8, but I'm really confused as to why it was such like they haven't really able to nail this finale. Now
Yeah.
I do feel like a lot of it Disney has ruined us a little bit because we're so used to Marvel and then some Star Wars shows being just one season and done.
Yeah.
And when they don't conclude if it's just one season, you're like, what? Well, then what happened now?
Yeah.
But the fact that this show and most shows in the previous always end with a cliffhanger, always end not finished because obviously
Yeah.
it's going to build into something else because it's a continuous show. And I feel like that this is the same kind of thing that they're going for with this particular finale.
Yeah.
Is because it is possibly leading to a season 2, and we know
Yeah.
for sure it's leading towards a movie.
I-
So it has that excuse, and
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
It definitely does, and a lot of it, like you said, does come from our uncertainty because, like I said, season 2 hasn't been officially confirmed yet.
No.
but we do know that a movie is coming.
We
But
do know a movie's coming.
I,
So
don't know, I
that's-
just wish they would wrap a little bit
I
up.
wish they would have wrapped some more up. I mean, the only they didn't really wrap any storyline up except for like Thrawn and Ezra switching places with Ahsoka and Sabine. That's really all
Yeah,
that happened. And they getting back. But I understand why. And they did wrap up the Morgan plot, which was fine.
Yeah.
But some of the other stuff
Just
could have been
it
better.
felt like a lot of kind of like action for nothing, kind of like in
Right.
Mando season 3 finale.
Yeah.
I felt like there's a lot of similarities, and personally, I would have liked it if this episode like focused more on the characters' relationships versus like
know.
these big old fight
Yeah,
scenes
this-
and undead armies.
Now,
The one
this
it had.
episode felt like more of a episode set up for a finale than an actual finale, in my opinion. Like it just didn't feel like a finale. But I mean, not to say this episode was a good episode. Like it was a good episode. Like I enjoyed it. It was fun to watch. It just wasn't a finale, and that's unfortunate to me.
Yeah.
But to get into it, so we see, and this was really cool. Morgan receiving the sword of Mother Talisman.
Yeah, and
from Clone
we
Wars.
haven't seen that since she fought Mace Windu, right?
Right, right. So that
That
was
was
cool.
an epic fight, by the way.
That was cool. So we get to see that. And then Ezra also, we got to see him making a new lightsaber that favored Kanan Jarrus's lightsaber.
Yeah.
That was cool.
That was cool.
I appreciate that. And then again, Thrawn remaining planning way ahead and like what's going to happen here.
yeah.
And we see that Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra come up with this plan to storm the, I don't know what you call it, like a tower. The
Yeah, I
tower.
don't know what
They
what it
stormed the
was.
tower, but the troopers were revived by the witch's magic, and all of them were actually dead, and they were just raised up. I was like, whoa, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's crazy. I feel like they could have gone without the witch plot. It's like, okay, it just feels like normal Star Wars.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
I
then
get
like,
it.
they're like, oh, undead armies. It's like, what?
Yeah, it didn't feel like
it makes sense in the Night Sister like world. I
Right.
feel like when you try to cross that with like the Empire world, I feel like it's a bad combination.
right, and I feel like
I don't know. That's just my opinion.
I understand. I feel like a lot of it makes sense to Clone Wars fans, like this whole idea of the witches and the rise.
I
and
love
stuff.
that. That was like my favorite.
Oh, there were
thing
some
in
great
Clone Wars.
plots.
Like, I love
and
that.
I'll talk about that here a little bit as well. But I feel like with casual Star Wars fans who don't know the witches and don't know that, might have thought that was kind of stupid. Which I could get. So
Like,
they
who are
need
these
to
people?
kind of bridge that gap a little bit there.
Yeah.
I think. And
Like a flashback with Samuel L. Jackson.
yeah, just fighting Mother Towers in live action. How cool would that have been?
That would have been.
Oh, that'd
dope.
been sick. But one con here, and we talked about this earlier, we touched on it, is the lightsabers did not cut through the armor of these stormtroopers. And I know why they couldn't do it is because it's a Disney Plus show. They didn't want it to show it, and it'd have to go up in the rating or whatever.
Yeah.
It'd have to be TV, whatever. And they couldn't do that and didn't want people being chopped in half in front of kids that are watching it. But still, it's like ruins lightsaber mechanics.
And then they're just kind of dumbing it down. I feel like Disney is kind of treating us like little kids. They're like, you guys can't see this. Like, no, like we've seen like Star Wars since like the freaking, since the 80s. We've seen limbs. We've seen all this stuff. Like,
right.
Don't try to like dumb it down for us.
And I mean, I understand why it's hard to do it. But at the same time, it's like they could have executed better, like showed it off screen or did something.
Yeah.
I mean, they did like show the helmet falling off and cutting the head off, but it's just, I didn't like that.
And then when they do that and when they downplay just how dangerous it is, like every time you see a lightsaber battle, you're less and less worried about your favorite characters.
Right.
Because you see, okay, this is not even power enough to cut through this. Why should I be concerned about characters?
The stakes there as well.
The stakes are not there.
And they're creating more things that can go up against lightsabers too.
Yeah.
Like Beskar makes sense.
Beskar
Cool.
makes sense, yeah.
But then having these
The Darksaber,
stormtrooper, like, things like stormtrooper things that doesn't, like, that's stupid.
Yeah, the
to me.
Magna Guard thingy in episode 3. Yeah, that works. But
okay, but like some of the other stuff, it just they gotta cut it down on that.
yeah,
That's
whereas
a compliment.
Qui-Gon in episode 1, he's like cutting through like 2 steel doors with that. I'm like, yes, that's cool.
And he gets killed, but actually going through his stomach.
Yeah, it's like, okay, someone
Like, bro
actually
could have
dies.
lived.
Yeah, bro would have lived
I know
in Disney's age.
he would. He
100%.
straight up would have. I don't know.
He'd be back the next
He
episode.
would have straight up. But, it is what it is. So then we see Morgan and Ahsoka confront each other. And this was actually a really cool fight. I must admit, it was a cool fight.
The choreography here is cool.
They did a really good
like
job.
a rematch of like, I don't know, season 2 of Mandalorian.
It was,
right?
and it was a really cool fight and everything about that. And then Ezra and Sabine trying to get on the ship to the Thrawn.
Yeah.
And we see this force jump and push. I thought that was
jump.
really cool.
First of all, I would not be trusting Sabine because she hasn't like proven like anything.
No, except
with
for
her
grabbing the
force abilities.
lightsaber yet. So
I'm
I
like,
would
dude,
not
I'm
be trusting
jumping.
Sabine.
I'm not doing it.
But it was cool to see that in live action because I think it was the first like force jump and then push we see in live action. That was really cool.
They gotta utilize that more, man. That's a powerful
It's
ability.
a great use. I mean,
If I
they
was
use
a
it in
Jedi,
Clone
I'd be
Wars
like
and Rebels.
jumping everywhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that was cool to see that. And then Ezra landing on there, but Sabine chooses to go back to save Ahsoka because Ahsoka was struggling in the fight.
Yeah.
And they end up beating Morgan and Morgan's death. So there was a death. So I'm
It was
glad that
about
they
time,
did that.
yeah.
I'm glad that they did that.
But I feel like her death was very inconsequential too. Like I feel like it would have been a bigger character like a Shin or maybe even like a Balin. But obviously they have different plans.
And I'm glad because, in typical shows, you're like, oh, they're not killing people off. Why? I mean, obviously you like these characters, but it's not giving stakes.
Someone has to
But
die.
in this case, I'm glad they didn't kill anybody off because I know it's building towards something bigger.
Yeah.
Except for Morgan, which I think was a good move to kill her off.
Yeah, she wasn't really going anywhere.
No, so I think that was a good move anyway. So we see Ezra going back to his roots and dressing as a stormtrooper. I just was waiting for him to walk up to somebody and be like, What's your name? What's your name, soldier? And him going, Jabba. What is your name? I was waiting for that. Or him going, my name's Lando. What are you talking? Like, don't you know me? I was waiting for that. I was hoping they'd do that. They didn't. But it was cool to see him dress back up as a stormtrooper because, as you know from Rebels, he does that a lot. So essentially, what happens is Thrawn and Ezra go back to the main galaxy, and Ahsoka and Sabine stay. They essentially just switched places, which was,
I was like, okay, what's going on here?
Right. And then even Shin and Balin stay in the other galaxy as well.
Yeah.
But one highlight from this episode, and I think you would probably agree was the best part of the episode as well. I mean, the fight was cool, but the whole Ahsoka and Thrawn conversation.
Yeah.
I think this part of the episode was just so good. The dialogue was incredible. It was just everything about it. And Thrawn just essentially taunting her that she lost, him saying like he knew her master and he knows her.
Yeah.
And he calls her a lone Ronin in this lonely world. And then he says, long live the Empire before they jet off into the galaxy. That was just so good. It gave me chills. I get chill bumps just thinking about that
dirt in her
conversation.
face.
He did.
I just already kicked her down.
I love Thrawn. I just love how he plays those mental mind games
Yeah.
and the incredible conversation that happened there. And then when Thrawn lands into the new universe, we see him coming up to a live action Dathomir, which was also really cool. And I'm excited to see
That's
that
the
in live
first.
action.
That's not the first time we've seen it, right?
It is the first time in
It
live
is the
action.
first time. Okay.
It is the first time we've seen Dathomir in live action, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
And then we go back, and this was the pretty crazy part of the episode, right? Shin she's back on Earth, or not on Earth, but on this planet.
Yeah.
She's recruiting the natives for her own cause, probably still wanting to go after Ezra and them, and Sabine and all them. Would make sense. And then we see Balin standing in front. I thought this was so cool and so out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it caught me off guard, and then everything started clicking and making sense for me. So Balin is standing in front of the statues of the Mortis gods. The son, the father and the son.
Father and son.
The daughter being gone because obviously she's dead. But it did show Morai, the bird, watching over Ahsoka, which we see from the series. And I thought, seeing this, I was shocked. I did the whole Leonardo, I did that because I was shocked. I was like, huh.
So what does it mean?
And then after thinking about it, I'm like, this makes total sense. Balin, I think, is an agent of these gods. I think that he knows about the Mortis gods. He knows about the Father. He knows about the Son. Balin may be the representative of the Son. He may be one that's building off their will. He's not Jedi, like he said, but he's not Sith either. He's one of them coming off, like he may be part of the Son, working for the Son, or even the new Son, right, that's taking his place. Because we all know Anakin's supposed to be the father. Yeah. Right? Ahsoka's supposed to be the daughter, possibly. And then seeing...
I hadn't heard about that one.
Yeah, so when we see...
How is Anakin supposed to be the father?
They
Because
say
he's the chosen one?
Yeah, he's the chosen one. So he said, and plus the father was like, you're supposed to take my place in Clone Wars.
I thought he died in Clone Wars. Did he not? It was just...
it was just the daughter.
The daughter, okay.
Yes, and the father was wanting Anakin to take his place, though.
Yeah.
The son was wanting to manipulate Anakin. But he's the balance between them.
Okay.
And that's what we see there. And then with this, I think Balin's an agent of them.
Okay.
The agent of the Mortis gods. He's wanting to bring that back into the light. And we see the father is pointing towards something. And he's pointing towards, you see way out there, it looks like you can see a light at what he's pointing at. A lot of people think that he's pointing towards the prison of the mother, Aboleth. And Aboleth...
Who?
Aboleth, the mother. We don't know. We haven't seen her before. So Aboleth, and this is all from Legends, but I think it's coming in the canon right here. So Aboleth is an evil. She's absolutely evil. Here, I'll show you a picture. She's scary.
So it's like her and the son are evil, and then the father and daughter
I'll give you
are
a
good?
breakdown. So Aboleth in Star Wars, she's freaking scary.
I've never heard of her.
So she's the mother of these Mortis gods. Yeah, scary looking girl.
Well, why would he marry her?
So, well, I mean, they're all part of these entities, these Force entities, right?
So maybe they're not married.
So we don't know. They're just these.
They're just
titles.
there. Yeah.
They're titles, and they imprisoned her in a faraway galaxy in Legends. So this is what it's saying here. This be the prison of Aboleth, and that she possibly will be released and be another big villain that they're trying to go towards. Because each of them represent a certain thing, right? You see the father. He represents the origin of the Force.
Okay.
He's the Force, right?
Yeah.
He represents that. The daughter represents the origin of the Jedi, right?
She does?
I would say so.
Okay.
And the son represents the origin of the Sith,
Okay.
I would say. But the mother possibly could be the origin of the witches, the Dathomirian witches, the Night Sisters. That's why the Night Sisters were there. That's why they have temples there.
That would make sense.
Is because she would represent that whole branch, that all four go together within the same Force, right? So you have all of these building. So I think Balin possibly either is working on this by the son's behalf, trying to release Aboleth, right?
Yeah.
And that's his main goal, getting to this galaxy. It wasn't Thrawn. It was to release the mother or something of that nature. I think could possibly be Balin's story.
Why? Why would they want to release her though?
Well, I think it's
and why would the father not try to prevent it?
Right, and we might see that, and we might see something of that nature. But then being another galaxy, who knows how it's going to translate there? So I think it's really interesting. That's why Ahsoka stayed, and we see that, and also we get Force Ghost Anakin at the end. Like we know he's present.
Yeah.
So how is this going to be involved with the Mortis gods?
And my question is, say she was released, like who would stop her? You know what I'm saying?
Who could? We don't know.
Like no,
it would have to be the father. It'd be the only one.
Yeah, but I'm saying at that point it would turn into something else completely. Like it wouldn't be based on the characters we know, like Ahsoka and stuff like that. It would be like that feels like an animated series.
It could be.
I don't know.
I don't know, but I think it was just really cool how we see the Mortis gods there in that galaxy, like as their statues, because they wouldn't have been there, and that was clearly the Mortis gods, unless they were building towards something. And he was clearly pointing to something. There was a light where he was pointing. So I'm curious to see, and I think it's really cool that it's going this way. As well with that. And I'm just really excited to see how that kind of plays and how they're going to establish those gods in the future. Because we know the death of the daughter, but she was, came into the bird Morai. So, and been watching over Ahsoka because Ahsoka apparently may be taking the daughter's place. So we'll see how that kind of translates in the future. So I think that's kind of an interesting theory that I have.
I had not heard that at all.
Yeah. So we'll see with that. And then I'll talk about some more stuff here in a minute once we finish up the episodes. The episode, we see Hera and Ezra finally reunite, and that was really cool to see them reunite. Again, Force Ghost Anakin. That really concludes the episode and the season. And again, not really a finale, but more of a continuation to the movie or season 2. There's a lot of plot points that at least they didn't just abruptly end them and just say, oh, they're done. Yeah. At least they didn't do that. At least they established, okay, there's more to each story. That's going to be broken down into those things, and they could be shown there. But one thing I noticed, I talked to my uncle. My uncle's a big Star Wars fan. And I was talking about he really liked the show Ahsoka as well. He thought it was really good. And it's very more so that I realized based on the book Heir to the Empire. Because in Heir to the Empire, the book, Thrawn is sent to a galaxy, but he was sent by Palpatine to stay there to try to build more reinforcements. But then Empire obviously fell. Yeah. So now when he returns, he's going to have to rebuild this empire as the heir. Yeah. So all this stuff that happened there. But also, there's a character in these books, and obviously many regard this as the true sequel trilogy. There's a character in this books that's actually a clone of a Jedi that is an older person. He's an older guy, clone of a Jedi, and he's coming in to, I don't know if it was release Abeloth, but it was to go and serve Thrawn and get rid of these other Jedi. Yeah. This could be Balin's character.
Okay. So what Jedi would he be cloned after?
And this is the thing.
That's the question.
Is maybe the son cloned someone and maybe he took him or did something along those lines, created him.
Yeah. I feel like if they're cloning him, it would have to be after a pretty big Jedi.
Oh, yeah. And I think
analyze his fighting style.
Was a clone, but the fact that he wouldn't know he was a clone yet. I think that would be a cool plot point as well, because he clearly wouldn't know. Yeah. Because in his mind, he thought it was a former Jedi.
Then his conflicts are purely internal because he's struggling with his existentialism. Like, who am I?
Right. So we'll see how that goes, but it's very much based on the books. Obviously, Leia and Luke and Han Solo are all involved with the book. So I would like to see some, at least, way of them being involved in the movie. Yeah. I don't know how they're going to do it. And obviously, their children are as well.
It would be hard, though.
It would be hard. So we'll see how they accomplish it. But overall, I do like where it's going with the series in itself. So, before we get to our rating, any final thoughts on the show?
No, that's about all I had. Like you said, I felt it wrapped up pretty well for what it had. Obviously, it didn't feel like a finale, but we know it's leading into a movie.
Right, it is.
But it saddens me with Rey's passing that we're not going to see more of his character.
I know, and
I've heard that they're going to recast it.
I've heard recasting, which is sad as well, because I would have loved to have seen Ray Stevenson's reaction to how much Star Wars fans love him.
I know.
I think that would have been great.
The fan favorite.
It's really unfortunate to see his passing, but I've seen a lot of people throwing out Gerald Butler as a possibility to play him. I think he would do a good job, and he looks like him.
I've seen the one guy who plays in X-Men, Wolverine's brother. What's his face?
Sabretooth?
Yeah. The guy who plays
Vince?
him.
Is it Vince?
Something like that. Okay. I forget his name.
It could be, but
I don't know.
Maybe something like that. But it was really, really cool to finally see Balin. Love you, Ray Stevenson.
Yeah, shout out, man.
Really hope that they can accomplish his story that they plan to do. All right, so rating time.
Ooh, I feel like this one is tough. I feel like personally, I wasn't a huge fan of the show, but I'm not gonna say it was bad because it definitely wasn't. No. I do feel like obviously at times we discussed there's a couple pacing issues. I do appreciate, like you said, they really didn't have any filler episodes.
Yes, that was a big appreciation.
I feel like they tied in it really well with Rebels. And I feel like it's pretty good considering what Star Wars put out. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with a 7.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's pretty fair. I think it's good, but I think Andor is still miles ahead of anything Disney. Yeah.
I would disagree.
You think Ahsoka's better than Andor?
I definitely think Ahsoka's better.
It is not in any universe.
I do. Andor's good, but Ahsoka's
it's written so much better. It doesn't dumb it down. They don't insult you.
I disagree.
It's political.
But I would give Ahsoka, I think I'm going to go with 8 out of 10. I love this show. I think it's definitely some of the best Disney Star Wars we've gotten. It's really, really good. I think I really enjoyed everything about it. I mean, especially as a Rebels fan, especially as a Clone Wars fan, coming in watching this show definitely put a smile on my face in every single aspect. I mean, definitely the show wasn't perfect, but I think what it's leading towards could be really, really incredible. So I think I would have to give it an 8 out of 10.
Okay. Okay,
But,
solid.
I mean, overall,
solid.
pretty good.
I'd say that's pretty solid. All right, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, let us know by giving us a review and a download. Our podcast, Here's in the Moment, is available on all major podcast platforms, so check it out. We'll be coming up here soon with our Loki season review, so go out and check those episodes out. If you want to stay up to date on our social media, check out our Instagram at Here's in the Moment.
And we just want to thank y'all for listening. And as always, we love you 3000.